For each generation, each generation has its James Bond. Each generation now has had its Superman, and each generation now is going to have their Lois Lane. There's going to be a whole generation of young women growing up who look to your Lois as like what a journalist is supposed to be. Did you think about that when you were kind of creating your character?
Yes and no.
All she ever kept saying was, "What will people think of me?"
I just hope people like me. That was my internal monologue the whole film. Yes and no. One of the first conversations I ever had with James before we did our screen tests, I asked him where this Lois, that's her alternate universe name, where this Lois fit into the canon. And he talked a lot about her as a journalist being really important in this iteration, that in the script that I don't think I'd read yet at that point, that her role as a journalist was going to be really central to the action of the story, and that in this moment in time in particular, that was really important, and that he wanted not just young women, although definitely young women, but everybody to be asking themselves questions about the pursuit of the truth and who gets to tell the truth and what the importance of a free and fair press are in this moment. And I think Lois really exemplifies that. And it's one of the themes of the conversation that the two of them have about journalistic integrity and ethics in journalism. And so I appreciate that while not every iteration finds this fine line, or finds this balance, I suppose, between Lois as Superman's love interest, these two have kind of met their match in each other, and her role as a really powerful and influential journalist. So I'm really excited for a new generation of kids to see both of these.
Yeah, in fact, in that, did you like maybe trail some journalists? Did you do any background work on that?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to speak to a couple journalists who were really generous with their time, investigative journalists, and mostly peppered them with really boring questions about what time they got into work and what did they do when they got up in the morning and how did they take their coffee and, what their vices were and if they used pens and paper still and all those kinds of things. And then got to speak to some of them about what brought them into journalism and especially what kept them going. That was a really interesting question for me, just how they got there and what they did when the kind of work that they were doing didn't make the kind of impact that they'd hoped for. And I was really struck by a bunch of women talking about like the competition in the workplace being forms of adrenaline junkies where, of course you hope to move the needle in the world and in your own community, but it doesn't happen every time the way you hope it does. And sometimes it catches you by surprise, but there's some good, healthy competition and this kind of insatiable desire to throw yourself into the fray in pursuit of the truth and a great story that felt really central to the backbone of every version of Lois, but especially this one.